The horrible attack in Nice makes very clear that immigration and terrorism are the same issue, not gun control, immigration. The guy didn't use a gun, he used a truck. When you let millions of Muslims into the United States in the current political situation, their ranks are going to be seeded with a terrorist here or a terrorist there. And in current technology, a lone wolf terrorist can accomplish the kind of devastating harm that we saw in Orlando, and we just recently saw in Nice and saw in San Bernardino before. In my book, Armageddon, How Trump Can Beat Hillary, I quote a poll taken by Pew Research, which asked American Muslims this question. Some people think that suicide bombing and other forms of violence against civilian targets are justified in order to defend Islam from its enemies. Other people believe that no matter what the reason, this kind of violence is never justified. Do you personally feel this kind of violence is often justified to defend Islam, sometimes justified, rarely justified, or never justified? 81% said never justified, but 1% said often, 7% said sometimes, and 5% said really. So, and the rest were undecided. So a total of 13% of American Muslims said that there were circumstances in which suicide bombings and other forms of terrorism were justified to defend Islam against its enemies, real or imagined, of course. Now, 13% may not sound like a lot, but at the moment, the Muslim population of the United States is about 2 million. So 13% is over 250,000 people. Very few of them would be terrorists, but enough. So the real question is, do we let enough potential terrorists into the United States so terrorism becomes an insolvable problem, as it is right now in France, and just gets completely out of control with repeated mass killings? In Armageddon, Eileen and I make the case that this is the last real election we're going to be able to have in America to change the direction of the country. And nowhere is that clearer than in the concept that if Hillary is elected, the bans on Muslim immigration will be lifted, refugees will come into the United States virtually at the will of the United Nations, and the Muslim population in the U.S. will grow to a point where we'll be in the same boat as France is, where the Muslim population is about 10% of the country. And once that happens, the ability to fight terrorism becomes very, very sharply limited. Now, there are those who say that we should not have a religious test for immigration, and I agree with that. I think that's unconstitutional. If I sat on the court, I'd vote against it. But it is not wrong, and it is not illegal, to identify certain countries as countries that harbor terrorists, and other countries as areas where significant portions of the territory are controlled by terrorists, and to limit immigration from those countries and not from other countries. We used to have 2 lists just like that. They used to have 10 or 12 countries each on it. And then one after another, Obama took the countries off the lists to a point where now it's only 3 or 4 countries, Yemen, Syria, and Iran, and North Korea and Iran, that are listed as terror sponsors. They even kicked North Korea and Cuba off it a few weeks ago. So we need to adopt that policy, and our national security depends upon it. Thanks for watching.